Now, I know that Game Week 11 isn't even over yet, and it's actually an international break next, but that doesn't stop me making some FPL content. And here are players to buy and avoid ahead of Game Week 12. So I wanted to start off just by looking at an 11-5 projection of upcoming clean sheets. And there's one team in particular that I really wanted to talk about before we go down into other teams. And that's Arsenal. Their next 5 game weeks, or next set of fixtures, I should say, are decent for clean sheets, right? We're just gonna look at them now. So clean sheet odds wise, 53% against Nottingham Forest, 42%, 45%, 41, 55. That's really quite decent clean sheet odds. And you look at the fixtures they've got coming up: Forest, West Ham, Man United, Fulham, Everton, Crystal Palace, Ipswich. I would suggest those clean sheet odds, in my mind, hold up quite well against the opposition that they face. I know Nottingham Forest have been strong this season, but their goal scoring, they've not been blowing teams away. It's been the odd Chris Wood low XG goal and really strong defence that's gotten them through a lot of their games. West Ham have been underperforming. Man United will have their new manager, but they've been underperforming this season. Fulham, they don't really ever score that many goals. Same with Everton, Crystal Palace, Ipswich are probably the worst team in the league right now, which is a bit of a surprise, I would say, considering I thought they'd be the best promoted team. But the next set of fixtures for Arsenal, defensively at least, are really strong. And yeah, I just wanted to bring the Arsenal defence to attention again, and just going back to those clean sheet odds. The one thing I would say, Gabriel has traditionally been the best Arsenal defender, right? Because he offers so much goal threat from set pieces. But I have noticed, I can't remember, someone might be able to credit them in the comments. Someone spotted this on Twitter, and I'm not taking full credit for it because I read it on Twitter. But someone noticed that when Marino, the new midfielder, is in the Arsenal team, Gabriel is no longer like the focal point of the corners and free kicks. It was always Gabriel really that was getting on the end of and scoring from their corners and free kicks, or at least, most of the time from those Rice and Saka set pieces. That doesn't seem to be happening as often when Marino is in the team. So maybe there's an argument to potentially pick Saliba instead, who is a little bit cheaper at the moment. Just something I thought I'd suggest. So other than Arsenal, Man City, match days, the clean sheet odds are not too bad, but they do just keep conceding the odd goal. So I'd probably rule out Man City, Liverpool, clean sheet's not great, 13-14. Newcastle, not too bad. I'd suggest, a cheap defender like Lewis Hall is probably on the menu. Man United, decent few games in there for clean sheet odds. The Chelsea fixtures do take a turn as well to become a lot better from matchday 12 onwards. I'd actually suggest Rob Sanchez could be a decent goalkeeper pick. I don't know about you guys, but I'm currently sat with Flecken, and I'm just had enough of Flecken, and I'm really looking at replacements for him. Potentially eyeing up someone like Jordan Pickford, mentioned Rob Sanchez, Onana, Pope maybe. I'm eyeing up those kinds of players to replace him. So yeah, all of those things talking about, I guess, are worth talking about in terms of these clean sheet odds. Any other teams? I'm just looking if there's any other teams worth exploring. Yes, one other team. They're currently, depends on how the game week plays out, but they're one of the best defences in the league so far this season, right, at Nottingham Forest. But their fixtures do turn from game week 12 onwards. And you can see here there's only one game where they have above even 30% odds to keep a clean sheet, and that's in matchday 13. Matchday 12, it's 11%. 14 is 8%. 17% in 15 and 24% in 16, right? That's not great, in my opinion. And not saying I would immediately get rid of my Forest defenders, but I certainly think I'd probably avoid buying them at least. And you can see the other clean sheet odds there, but I guess that's the main things to pull out from looking at this data. So next up, I wanted to use another 11-5 model just to look at predicted goals. So this is a projection of how many goals each team are going to score over the next game weeks, basically. So we've just seen the clean sheet odds, and now we've got how many goals they're going to score. I said that a load of times. Anyway, so this is the next 5 game weeks. Top is Man City, followed by Liverpool, and then Arsenal. So what you usually find with this list of teams are the top teams usually dominate, because the top teams in the league, usually regardless of who they play, unless they have a ridiculously tough fixture run, they're usually going to be in and around the top, right? That's, I guess, no surprise. Man City are the number 1. I'd say, though, with Man City, I just feel they have limited attacking options. With the amount of rotation you'd expect, the amount of players that Pep has at his disposal when they're all fit, it's only really Haaland, I think, from the Man City attackers that you can absolutely guarantee is going to play every game. I mean, outside of that, I don't think there's anyone from that Man City squad that I would want to pick in my team. I think of Liverpool as well in second there. Outside of Mo Salah, is there a Liverpool attacker you can bank on playing all the games? I don't think there is. Arsenal, I think Havertz could be a decent option, to be fair, particularly with Odegaard being back. Odegaard, when he was fit this season, didn't really put up any kind of good numbers or data at all. So I would probably avoid Odegaard, but I definitely think Havertz is an option again. And I definitely think Saka is, right? Saka and Havertz, I would say, are worth picking from the Arsenal defence. And I know from the Arsenal attack, and I know we're talking about the Arsenal attack here, but just flip that onto their Arsenal defence. The fixtures I showed for the Arsenal defence, apply that to the attackers, right? I'm struggling with my words here. This is the second video I've made today, or I was live for 3 hours this morning. These are the fixtures for Arsenal, right? And I mean, I'd expect them to score in all of those games, multiple goals probably in all of those games. The Forest one, from an attacking perspective, is probably the toughest. You know, West Ham, you'd expect them to score in that. They'd probably score against Man United, probably score against Fulham. Same with Everton, Crystal Palace and Ipswich, right? So those fixtures in my mind are looking really quite good for the Arsenal attack. And like I said, a couple of options for me. I'd probably avoid Odegaard, but I do think he strengthens Havertz being in the team. Means that Havertz is basically going to play as the number 9. And then obviously you've got their talisman, Saka, right? Spurs are up there as well. They do have a little bit of a tough fixture run coming up. Chelsea, like I said, I said talking about their defence, I do think Rob Sanchez is a decent goalkeeper option because of the good fixtures that they've got. I'd also apply that to their attackers, right? Outside of Palmer, I just think I would not trust any of the other Chelsea midfielders to play every week. The one other Chelsea attacker I do like is Nicholas Jackson. I think he provides pretty decent value, and he has kind of found his finishing touch that he definitely didn't have last season. So I do think Nicholas Jackson could be a good option, and you see those goal projections there. I think he could be a good option. Newcastle, you know, they're 6th here. I probably, you know, you're getting lower and lower in the ranks, but I do think Isak is a good option. And when you compare him to Ollie Watkins, for example, I do think he's a lot better. Last season, he put up better numbers from less games, and he takes penalties. He is obviously a little bit injury prone, is Isak, but I do think he's probably a better option than Ollie Watkins. And potentially, if you're looking to sell Erling Haaland, I'm not actually going to talk about Erling Haaland in this video because I think that narrative and story is a little bit old now. But yeah, I do think Isak is better than Watkins, basically. And probably, if you're looking to sell Haaland, his best replacement if you don't need loads of money and want to go super cheap. Semenyo of Bournemouth, even though he didn't do very well in Gameweek 10, I think is going to be a good option as well. You know, he's taken, I still think, the second most shots in the Premier League, and the Bournemouth fixtures are looking really good. The Man United attack, I'll get on to my favourite Man United option at the moment, but the one thing I would say is just a word of caution on the Man United attack. Ruben Amorim has come in, obviously, as the Man United manager and will do after the international break. His system is very different to what Man United are playing at the moment, and I just have no idea what their starting 11 is going to look like. So just a word of caution on the Man United attack. And then what we're looking at there, Everton near the bottom. I mean, if I had Calvert-Lewin, I'd look to get rid of him almost instantly, to be honest. And then the Nottingham Forest projected goals coming up. They're not looking too smart either, are they? Which could suggest Chris Wood might want to be looking to get rid of him. And I think the best replacement, if you can get to him for Chris Wood, is Matheus Cunha. 11 appearances, 5 goals now in the league. Scored an absolute, 5 attacking returns. Scored an absolute cracker in the game in Gameweek 10 that he had. Sorry, in the Gameweek 11 that he had. I think he's a great option. Likely, I would say, on penalties, especially when Sarabia is not on the pitch. Yeah, I think he's a great player and a really good option. Look at the next 5 fixtures, right? Fulham, Bournemouth, Everton, West Ham, Ipswich. They're all kind of bottom half of the Premier League teams. Yeah, I think he's going to be... He's a wonderful player and I think he could be a really good option. But he's not the only cheap striker that Wolves have available. He comes in now, I think, at 6.6 million. There's also Strand Larsen. Both players have played 11 games. Both players have 5 attacking returns. However, Cunha has probably taken, well, by the looks of it, more than double the shots that Strand Larsen has. More shots in the box, but accumulated slightly less XG, slightly more expected assists. And yeah, you can see all the stats there as a comparison, right? They all, of course, have the same fixtures. But I guess what I wanted to say here, I'd be a little bit cautious. I believe Strand Larsen picked up a bit of a knock in the game in Game Week 11, but I think with the international break to recover, he should be fine. I guess the one thing I wanted to say about these two players is I think with both you get what you pay for. Cunha, I think the fact that he's on penalties probably justifies the extra price. But if you don't have enough money in the bank when you're looking to get Cunha in, and you're still looking to replace and get a cheap striker in, I think Strand Larsen is a perfectly respectable option if that's all you can afford. And you can see there in the stats, there really isn't a whole lot to split them. Just furthering on the point of potential Chris Wood replacements, if you want to get rid of him. So looking at the best cheap strikers in the game. So what I've done here is filtered on the Fantasy Football Hub expected points tool, best strikers for expected points over the next 5 game weeks that are less than 7 million. Chris Wood still comes out on top, right? Despite the tough fixture run that he's got, he still comes out as the number 1. In second place, you've got Cunha, who I've already spoken about. Raul Jimenez is up there. Wissa is up there as well. João Pedro, potentially, although he didn't start in Game Week 11. Jorginho Ruta played in his place. Vardy and Calvert-Lewin there as well. I'm probably going to ignore anything from Wissa below, to be completely honest with you. And for some reason, Strand Larsen doesn't appear here. I would put Strand Larsen on this list as well. So outside of Chris Wood, if you're looking for replacements, Cunha's obviously an option. Raul Jimenez is an option. Wissa is an option too. And Strand Larsen as well. And someone's going to ask me to pick my favourite cheap striker that isn't Chris Wood. I'd probably say it's Cunha. And in second place, I'd actually give it to Raul Jimenez. Even though Wissa is off the back of a brace in Game Week 11, I actually think Raul Jimenez could well be a better option. Just because I just love penalty takers in FPL. And he hasn't had one yet. But the last penalty that Fulham had, Andreas Pereira took it and it was woeful. A terrible penalty. I believe when Pereira wasn't on the pitch, Raul Jimenez took one before that and scored it. And he's got quite a decent penalty record. So, yeah, I'd probably say Raul Jimenez outside of Cunha is my favourite cheap striker. You know, he's in good form, putting up good numbers, good underlying data, and I think he's going to be the Fulham penalty taker. I've got nothing to back that up because he hasn't taken one yet when Pereira's been on the pitch. Just my opinion, but I'd heavily back him to take the next pen. The Man United fixtures do take a little bit of a turn, although they do have a couple tough ones mixed in there, as you can see. The thing is with their new manager, right, I did a sigh there because I'm a Man United fan and I'm not all that optimistic at the moment. Even though we've got a new manager coming in, I'm struggling. I just don't know how they're going to line up. And I've seen quite a lot of talk, particularly on Twitter, of Man United potentially being back on the menu again. But I just think their starting 11 is going to be so uncertain. How they're going to line up at the back, who their 2 wing-backs are going to be, what their front line is going to be like, what their midfield's going to look like. You probably don't want to buy the likes of Mainu or Ugarte, who I think will play there in FPL anyway. Which leaves the attackers. And again, you know, I do not know. I have no idea how he's going to line up, Ruben is going to line up for his attackers. But the one player who must make it into the team has got to be Bruno Fernandes, right? Obviously, at the time I'm recording this video, he hasn't played yet in Game Week 11. And his numbers this season are not all that impressive, right? 3 attacking returns from 10 games is not really all that impressive. But he's taken 15 shots in the box. He's put up 3.74 expected goals, 1.79 expected assists. If you add that together, that's basically 6 attacking returns, double what he's actually got. So I do think at some point that data will revert to the norm and he'll start putting up numbers of that level. That 6 attacking returns from 10 games is pretty decent. Like I said, apart from those Arsenal and Man City fixtures in there, which is, I guess, half of the next 5. But in the long term, the Man United fixtures do look pretty good. But I just exercise some caution about Man United in general, you know. I personally, as a Man United fan, have no idea what the team's going to look like. But I can pretty much guarantee you that Bruno Fernandes is going to be in it, right? He's the club captain. Plays every game, 90 minutes every game, under every manager that Man United have had since he joined. So, you know, I think you can pretty much guarantee he's going to play. But outside of that, I probably wouldn't trust any of the other Man United players. One more thing I wanted to look at just to round off the video was the top players for the next 3 game weeks for expected points according to FPL Review. It's just useful to look at, I think. And expected points-wise for Game Week 12, he hasn't played yet while I'm recording this video in Game Week 11, so genuinely anything could happen. But Haaland is currently top. 7.3 expected points for Game Week 12. Second for Game Week 12 in isolation is Salah. Palmer is the second best player, though, for expected points across the next 3. That's due to, I think it's Liverpool and Man City that play each other, isn't it, in game week 13. So just something to bear in mind there. Palmer is actually ahead of Salah for expected points. Got Saka up there as well. So it's the big four, basically. Haaland, Palmer, Salah, Saka are the big four players in FPL price-wise, and the big four in terms of expected points. Like I said, Odegaard does look like he could potentially be back for Arsenal, and I just haven't been that impressed with him when he has played this season. He hasn't put up very decent numbers at all. But FPL review is pretty bullish on Odegaard being a decent option. You can see there he's the 5th best player in the entire game for expected points, right? So just something to bear in mind. Foden and De Bruyne, like I said, just outside of Haaland, I just have a lack of trust in the minutes of any of those Man City midfielders to the point where I probably just wouldn't pick them. And Bumo's always going to be there. And like I said, when talking through the Arsenal fixtures and attack, I think you've got to consider Havertz as well. And I personally, even though they're different positions, I personally would rank Havertz above Odegaard as an Arsenal attacker or forward or midfield option, I guess. That's not a defender that I'd actually want to pick. I think Havertz is better than Odegaard. So yeah, I think that summarises it quite nicely. Just thought it'd be useful, basically, just to have a look at the best players over the next 3 game weeks, according to FPL Review. All right, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed that and found it useful. Like I said, I know it's an international break coming up, but I always make FPL content on a Saturday night, and the international break's not going to stop me. You know, people are still going to be thinking about what to do with their team. So hopefully you enjoyed the video and find it helpful. If I've missed any players, at the time I'm recording this, Liverpool and Man City haven't played yet. So I'm recording this it's 5:57 p.m. on Saturday. So, you know, something might have happened in those games that I need to cover on Sunday. And I will have a couple of live streams and a video coming out on Sunday as well. So if you haven't already and you want to check those out, subscribe to the Golden Goal channel, which should be just there on your screen. I think that's everything. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you in my next video.